From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
Welcome back into yet another edition of Cleats and Sneaks. I am your host, James Mesh, the podcast where we discuss everything from the NFL to the NBA. Don't forget to like on the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, ESPN Southwest Louisiana. And also, don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. That way you get notified every time we upload any one of our videos and podcasts here on the channel, whether it's this show right here, Cleats and Sneaks, or For Tire Change with Dawson Iserlo, and even Over Par with Matt Miguez. Let's not waste any of your time. Of course, we had the big game over on Sunday, Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers. I know you're going to be a little bit fatigued of what's been going on, the recent success. We've now got yet another dynasty in the NFL. We just got over one with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, and here we are, yet another AFC team taken over as they've won 3 out of their last 4 Super Bowls over a 5-year span. Kansas City Chiefs coming out on top 25-22 in an overtime game. It was interesting though because it got pretty uptick in scoring as we got into the second half, but it was the usual slow kind of start that we see in Super Bowls. Usually teams are kind of trying to figure each other out, see do you kind of stick with what you've been doing and going with your mantra of what you've done all season, how you got here, or were you kind of changing up your pace and going with a different type of game plan? Kind of relatively the same as we were scoreless after the first quarter, usually 0-0. That's the type of score that you're going for. If you're doing any of your office's Super Bowl squares, well, if you had that one, you hit on it, of course, as we ended the first quarter 0-0. However, on the first drive, San Francisco was threatening to score as they got down inside the 30-yard line of Kansas City. However, very uncharacteristic, not only from Christian McCaffrey, but you also saw it from Isaiah Pacheco later in the game. A fumble from Christian McCaffrey. Leo Chenal punches the ball out before Christian's knee goes down, and then George Karlaftis falls on the ball at the 27-yard line. Kansas City takes over from there. But it was a punt battle throughout most of the first quarter and the first half as well. You see a kick by Jake Moody take the early lead in the second quarter for San Francisco. And then you even see a pretty crazy trick play where Brock Purdy throws it behind him to Jauan Jennings to the left side of the field. And then Jauan Jennings throws all the way to the opposite side of the field to Christian McCaffrey, who takes it in for the 21-yard touchdown with about 4.5 minutes to go. Kansas City down 10-0. We're not shocked there. They're pretty familiar with being down by double digits in playoff games. They've done it plenty of times. But Kansas City was able to get a field goal late in the second quarter, and we went into halftime, the 49ers up 10-3. Now, what was interesting was in the second half, Kansas City got the ball to start, and Patrick Mahomes threw a very uncharacteristic interception. It looked like it was going to Travis Kelce. I assume it was going to Travis Kelce on the play, because if he was trying to go to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, well, he was throwing to someone into double coverage. So I would fair to assume that the ball was going to a wide open Travis Kelce. He just overthrows it and it gets intercepted. One thing to note though, San Francisco is a very run-heavy team. You expect a lot of touches and a lot of carries for Christian McCaffrey, and even Deebo Samuel gets some carries in the run game as well. We know he's a wide receiver, but because of his versatility, he can run routes, but as well get the ball in his hands as soon as you can. He's going to be able to make plays. They did it a couple of times. However, I think they got a little too greedy with trying to throw the ball with Brock Purdy. I think Kyle Shanahan may have thought about it too much and maybe put his faith into his young second-year quarterback a little too much. He threw the ball a total of 38 times, but the fact that in the first 3 drives of the second half, they called 8 pass plays. One of them, Brock had to scramble on third down. He only got a 4-yard gain, so you almost don't want to count that. But the fact that it was a passing play to begin with, that was ridiculous. Christian McCaffrey got the 1 carry for 0 yards on that third drive on first down. But then on the second drive, he got a catch on 2nd and 18 for a wide open coverage because everyone was back in a cover 4 or deep because they didn't want to give up anything on a 2nd and 18. It led to a long third down. and then San Francisco had to punt anyway. On those 3 drives, all resulting in 3 and outs. The 9 plays went for a total of -2 yards. I think that's utterly ridiculous. The fact that you didn't, even if you didn't want to run it with Christian McCaffrey, you should have ran it with Elijah Mitchell, local product from here, or if you wanted to get Debo the ball a little bit more, I think you should have done that as well if you weren't going to give it to Christian, because it's weird. Christian McCaffrey will get carry after carry after carry, 4 or 5 plays in a row on a drive, but then you'll see them stall out because they don't give it to him for 2 to 3 straight drives in a row. It makes no sense. There's so much interest or disinterest with trying to get McCaffrey the ball. I understand you don't want to get it to him 40 times every game, but if you can do 3 touches here on a drive, 2 to 4 here, not have these long lulls of Christian not touching the ball, he's the main reason that you've been so successful and you've gotten to this point. I know you've had other guys and you've had kind of a running back by committee, but even if you don't want to do that, get Christian the ball. The fact that he's not touching the ball as frequently as he was in certain points throughout the game was ridiculous. Because if you would have even been able to get 2 field goal range, the fact that you started in Kansas City's territory for your first drive in the second half, and you weren't able to take advantage of any of those opportunities to extend your lead, that was one of the main reasons why you gave up your lead and you blew yet another Super Bowl. One thing to note, though, later in the game, after Jawan Jennings actually caught his touchdown pass, he was a part of 2 touchdowns, the only 2 touchdowns for San Francisco on the night. The PAT by Jake Moody was blocked by Leo Chenal once again. He was one of the guys on defense that had a phenomenal day for the Chiefs. Instead of that being a 4-point game going up 17-13, it became a 16-13 game. So it didn't put the pressure on Kansas City to feel like, oh no, we have to score a touchdown coming up. If they had to settle for a field goal, they were all for it. And then you saw that multiple times. They went 16-16 late in the fourth quarter. San Francisco even kicked a field goal to put themselves up 19-16. But then on the final drive, they were able to kick a chip shot field goal to once again tie it and send it into overtime. Because of that pressure of not having to score a touchdown, it only needing to be a field goal, that made a world of a difference. Leo Chenal came up quite a few times, of course, with that fumble early in the game on Christian McCaffrey, but also Chris Jones. He came up big quite a few times because he forced passes by Purdy that were wide open or had very good opportunity to become touchdowns or at least big plays to set up touchdowns later on in that drive, like even the toss back to Purdy where he rolls right and then he throws it to an open Debo Samuel. Chris Jones, if he wasn't there, or even with the play late in the game where they had to settle for the field goal in overtime to Ayuk, Ayuk was coming on an over route from left to right. He was wide open in the end zone. If Chris Jones wasn't there to disrupt the pass or force Brock Purdy to look in a different direction or look later into his progression to someone else, if he wasn't there, those would have been touchdowns, and it easily would have been San Francisco's day. They would be hoisting the Vince Lombardi trophy instead of the Chiefs for the 3rd time in Patrick Mahomes' career. But then you look on the flip side for the offensive line. We've always noted that Trent Williams is, if not one of the best offensive lineman in the league at the moment. He did not have his best stuff on Sunday. There were multiple times he got beat on plays. There was multiple times he got called for holding. Now, of course, there was multiple times Kansas City, the offensive lineman, should have been called for holding. They didn't get the call, but that's another discussion for another day. Trent Williams got called for multiple flags on multiple drives that halted whatever progress that they had, any opportunity that they had to score or extend their lead. It was negated because of a Trent Williams penalty. They gave up pressure on both sides, not only from Trent Williams on the left side, but even on the right side as well. George Karlaftis, and even without Omenihu on the left side because of a torn ACL in the AFC Championship, you saw plenty of pressure from not only the edges, but Chris Jones. Trent Williams did not have himself a good day, and it led to the 3-point loss. One note that I did want to say, Chris Conley had quite a big game. He made the one big catch on one of the drives in the first half, but then he also made 3 spectacular plays on special teams. He made 2 phenomenal tackles, And then he also got in front of the ball on a punt that forced the Chiefs to have to start their drive at the 1 yard line, really pinning them deep. And it led to another punt, which led to another opportunity for San Francisco to be able to extend their lead. Yet, because of a really good defensive performance, like guys from L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Leo Chenal, all those guys on Kansas City's defense, it helped project them and give Patrick Mahomes and that offense an opportunity to come back and win their third Super Bowl. Even with a good game by Chris Conley on the special team side of the ball, there was even bigger blunders by that unit. Not only did we talk about the blocked kick by Leo Chenal on Jake Moody's extra point, but then there was the punt by Kansas City where you look at it and it hits one of the San Francisco guys in the leg. The punt returner tries to get it, but because of the weird shape of a football, you're not quite sure where it's going to go. It ends up going through his hands, and then Kansas City is able to fall on it once again, leading to a score and a touchdown by Kansas City, and they were able to take the lead. I think because of those, the missed opportunities on the offensive side of the ball when Kansas City wasn't able to take any advantage or even get much of an offense going, and then the lulls of not giving Christian McCaffrey the ball at certain points in the game, that led to San Francisco falling once again in the Super Bowl. They started off 5-0 as a franchise when they would go, but since then, the last 3 times, they have not been able to capitalize on their opportunities. Not only the stalled out drives by San Francisco and the penalties by certain offensive linemen, and then even questionable play calling to certain guys at certain points in the game, but even then, huge injuries. I mean, Deebo Samuel, he came in and out throughout the game. You could tell he was definitely injured because of that hamstring. It halted him in the second half. But early in the game, Dre Greenlaw, he was having himself a good game. He wasn't lighting it up with multiple interceptions or forcing multiple fumbles, but he was having a relatively good game. And then when he tried to get on the field, all of a sudden, he tore his Achilles. That was a huge blow, and you could tell the effect, not only from Kansas City side, when Patrick Mahomes said, hey, 57's injured when he was on the ground going into that next drive. But then even other guys like Fred Warner, you could hear the anguish in his voice when he saw, oh no, one of our guys is down. And then even Kyle Shanahan was shocked when Dre Greenlaw went down the play. He said, wait, did he just get down? Did he injure himself going onto the field? It was a huge loss. It kind of felt like there was multiple bad omens in a sense. I know that they had complained about the practice facility that they had to go to because they were the away team, so they weren't able to use Las Vegas's practice facility. And then they had problems with their hotel room. I believe a fire alarm went off. It felt like there was multiple things that was going on that were signs that this isn't going to go in favor of San Francisco. And yet, despite all that, they almost were able to win. However, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and company were able to overcome all the deficiencies that they had and became Super Bowl 58 champions. Travis Kelce, he was shut out for the most part in the first half. He only had the one catch on a screen for 1 yard. San Francisco was really sniffing that out. Kansas City was not able to go to that. I know that was a lot of their success coming from screens, quick screens to Travis Kelce, get it to Rashee Rice, throw it to Isaiah Pacheco quickly. They were shutting down that really early on, so Kansas City had to flip the script in the second half. Travis Kelce was running more intermediate routes, and you end up seeing him get 9 catches for 93 yards on the day. Mecole Hardman caught that 52-yarder in the first half that set up what was going to be a score, but then became a fumble by Isaiah Pacheco, one of those other uncharacteristic fumbles by guys. Usually they're pretty sure-handed, and they don't allow the ball to fall out of their hands too often. But it was a very interesting game. Even though the best quality wasn't there, I would say the gameplay was about a 7 out of 10. It definitely wasn't one of the worst Super Bowls, but because of the mistakes that were made by the teams, it definitely halted them. And the fact that you had to settle for field goals way too often, especially when you were in the red zone and you had opportunities to score touchdowns, that kind of took it down a couple of points for me in the game. Nevertheless, it was still a good overall Super Bowl, even though people weren't exactly excited that the Chiefs won it once again. It was still good because we saw good plays, good commercials. It was still two very good teams that were very deserving of getting to this point, especially with how they played into the playoffs. But now that the NFL season is done, we can flip the script and look more at the NBA right now. We're going to have plenty of time to be able to talk about what's going on in free agency, look at the coaching hires, and even get ready for the draft process, as that always happens at the end of April. We'll have plenty of time to get to that. For right now, let's look at the NBA standings, as the Boston Celtics are still the number one team in the Eastern Conference with a 42-12 record. The next closest is the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are 6 games behind with a 35-17 record. Boy, that streak by Cleveland. They had won 17 out of 18 in a row, including beating Milwaukee twice, beating the Wizards twice. They were on an absolute tear. But then they lost most recently on Monday to the 76ers, 123-121. They were on an absolute roll. Other teams to look at in the East, the Knicks, they're still there. They're at the 4 seed, 9 games behind the Celtics at 33-21. And then you see other teams like Miami, they're still trying to scratch and claw. They're at the 7 seed right now, still inside the play-in tournament, while the Indiana Pacers are at that 6 seed. Then looking at the Western Conference, much more tight race right there. Minnesota only holds a 1-game lead over the Oklahoma City Thunder for that 1 seed at 38-16. Of course, then you look at the Denver Nuggets. They're kind of sleepwalking in a sense. They're still there. They're not in the play-in tournament by any stretch, but the fact that they're the 4 seed and they're still 36-18, they're hanging around. They may not be the 1 or 2 seed like they were last year, but they're still a very good team that, of course, has championship experience, and there's someone that you need to watch out for as we get closer to the playoffs. The New Orleans Pelicans, however, they're right there. They're at that 6 seed. They could very easily be the 5 seed by the end of tonight or tomorrow, but they very could also well be the 8 or 9 seed with a couple of losses and a couple of things not bouncing their way, because the Dallas Mavericks are right there at 31-23, while the Sacramento Kings are also right there at 30-23. And then the Los Angeles Lakers, they refuse to go away. They're only 9.5 games behind the Minnesota Timberwolves at 29-26. But at that 9 seed, they're very close. A couple of things over these next couple of games, they very easily could be that 5 or 6 seed. Just need to make sure, if you're the New Orleans Pelicans and you're Willie Green's group, you need to make sure that you still stay on a roll. You haven't played the best basketball. You've gotten a couple of ugly wins, but the fact that you're still getting wins despite the bad performances, it's a good sign. You just need to make sure that you pick it up as we get closer to the end of the regular season. But that'll do it for this latest edition of Cleats and Sneaks. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, ESPN Southwest Louisiana, and also turn on notifications. That way you know anytime that we upload any one of our podcasts, whether it's Over Par with Matt Miguez, even the Miguez Mindset, or 4 Tire Change, or even this podcast, Cleats and Sneaks, with your host, James Mesh. That's it for now. I'll talk to you next week when we recap the All-Star break and look at the latest with the NBA standings. Till then, I'm James Mesh, and I'll talk to you next time.